All right, Nick, let's talk about the Alabama Crimson Tide. On this channel, we love to talk about how good recruiting begets better recruiting, how A players all want to play with A players. But, Nick, we have a story today just about how those A players are going out to try to get more A players.
Yeah, Miles, I think this report you found, I think, is absolutely ridiculous. It's bonkers, and it's great news for the Alabama Crimson Tide in the long term. But before we get into that report, Alabama fans, I want you to answer this question in the comment section below. This report today is about the future of the program, but 2023 isn't that long away. That is the here and now. So in the comment section below, give us your breakout candidate currently on the Alabama Crimson Tide: offensive player, defensive player, special teams player, whatever it may be. Give us your breakout candidate for Alabama heading into the 2023 season in the comment section below. All right, Miles, what you got? What's the latest out of Tuscaloosa?
Yes, Nick, we are talking about five-star, top-ranked wide receiver prospect in the 2025 class, none other than Ryan Williams, who've already committed to Alabama way back since October. This guy has gone out and he is now dubbing himself Nick Saban's secret weapon in the recruiting game. And I'm going to get into the article right now. Nick, this is over from On the Athletic. They have a lot of great articles over there. Almost too much information to digest. So if you want to get a plethora, well worth your money, go check out The Athletic. But this says Ryan Williams, the top ranked receiver in the class of 2025, has been committed to Alabama since October. And while a lot can happen between now and December 2024, when Williams can make it official, you can pretty much call him Nick Saban's secret weapon. He says, I'm the head recruiter in the class of 2025. While competing at the Future 50 camp, a 2-day camp held at IMG Academy that featured 52 of the top prospects in the 2025 class, Williams says his sales pitch is easy. He tells recruits that Saban, 71, plans to coach until he takes his last breath, and stresses that they will have an opportunity to play early because the Crimson Tide sends so many players to the NFL. He says, I tell them, you're going to win and you're going to get some rings, said William, who plays at Saraland, Alabama High. He says, we're going to bring in big recruiting classes for the next few years. I mean, it's pretty much set in stone. Well, Nick, I think this is really interesting because William obviously has some great points. Now, I don't know if Saban's going to coach until his last breath. He probably wants to in his head, but he does make a lot of great points. He says they're going to get opportunities to play. Alabama does send a lot of guys to the NFL really early. That's an interesting take on how you can get playing time because the guy that might be better than you in front of you is going to be gone. He's going to the NFL as soon as possible. Then the other thing he says, you're going to win and you're going to get some rings. And who doesn't want that kind of prowess, Nick? I think this is a very interesting article and just shows how when you get an A player who's really motivated to be on your team, they will even go out on their own and try to get other A players. Nick, I'm curious, what are your thoughts on Alabama and specifically what Williams is doing?
So I think it's important to understand, especially recruits before they go into their junior and senior season and they get, really an opportunity to interact more with these coaches. There's a lot of rules and regulations about how often coaches can interact with players, right? There are zero rules and regulations for how other high school players can interact with other high school players, obviously, whether they're committed or not. And I think it's really smart of Alabama to leverage a committed player to try and talk to other players as much as they can. It just makes sense, right? Say, if I'm Saban and I'm his recruiting staff and say, well, I hypothetically, I can only call, Joe Smith, a great prospect, one time a week. That kind of stinks. Well, if I talk to one guy who's already committed in this case and say, hey, can you call Joe 3, 4, 5 times a week? That kind of triples, quadruples, quintuples our communication with this player and helps build up that solid recruiting base, especially when you get a guy in Williams here literally repeating the party line, the Nick Saban party line, boosting him up, supporting everything they're trying to do in Alabama. I think that's an awesome advantage. I don't think this is the first time Alabama has done this. If I had to bet, I believe this has probably been a big part of Nick Saban's strategy going back the past decade and a half. This is definitely one of the smarter moves I've seen in recruiting. But I also want to focus on a point you hit on, what the story hit on there, Mize, is that you've got a kid. This is like a 15-year-old kid, 16-year-old kid. He's not going to commit or sign until December 2024. And he is already so forward thinking about how can I bring in quality recruiting classes to my class when it comes time to sign on the line that is dotted come the end of 2024. I tell you what, this is just an unbelievable era of college football where all these recruits, and we say it all the time and we mean it, but it's still crazy to see how much good recruiting begets better recruiting, how much getting one early commit, if it's the right commit, can help you attract a lot other top flight recruits. And look, we talk about, say, Alabama. Look, do they really need a lot of help bringing in the top flight recruits? I mean, this is Alabama, for God's sakes. every little advantage helps, especially when you've got Georgia being the big dog, no pun intended, in the SEC over the past couple of years. You've got Oklahoma, Texas joining the fray, Ohio State, Michigan, USC, they're big time programs. Talking about USC West, of course, over there in LA, not the USC in Columbia. I think having any advantage you can get is huge for your program. And credit to Nick Saban, and frankly, credit this young kid for leveraging this advantage and putting in the time to try and use it to get every possible edge they can legally in the recruiting game.